In the heart of the northern Maine woods lies a town so small and isolated it's almost forgotten. A place where the fog rolls in thick and heavy and the silence hangs like a shadow. On a cold October night in 2005, something happened in Harper Mills that no one can explain. A man heard a voice that shouldn't be there, calling him into the woods. What he found, or what found him, has been a mystery ever since. Before we unravel this chilling tale, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. You won't want to miss what happens next in this eerie story that's bound to send shivers down your spine. Are you ready to step into the unknown? Let's begin. The Vanishing of Harper Mills. Tucked away in the dense forests of northern Maine is a town so small it barely shows up on maps. Harper Mills, population 728, is a place where time seems to stand still. The town's one main street is lined with weathered wooden buildings, and the nearest neighbor is miles away, hidden by thick trees and winding roads. Life in Harper Mills is slow and quiet, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business, until something happens that no one can explain. It was the fall of 2005, the air crisp and filled with the scent of pine. The leaves had just started to turn, painting the landscape in brilliant shades of red and gold. It was on a chilly October night that something strange began to unfold in Harper Mills, something that would change the town forever. Our story centers around 32-year-old Jake Lawson, a man who had lived in Harper Mills his entire life. Jake was a mechanic, known around town as the guy who could fix just about anything with an engine. He was a quiet, reliable man, content with the simple life Harper Mills provided. But beneath his calm exterior, Jake harbored a deep sadness. 5 years earlier, his wife Emma had disappeared without a trace while out for a morning jog. The entire town had searched for weeks, combing the woods and questioning every resident. But Emma was never found. Her disappearance had left a void in Jake's life, one that he filled with work and the occasional drink at the local bar. On the night of October 14, 2005, Jake was closing up his garage when he noticed something strange. A thick fog had rolled in from the woods, blanketing the town in an eerie white mist. It wasn't unusual for fog to settle over Harper Mills, but this fog was different, denser, almost unnatural, and with it came an unsettling silence. No crickets chirping, no rustling of leaves, just an oppressive, heavy quiet. As Jake locked the garage door, he felt a sudden chill run down his spine, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He turned around expecting to see someone behind him, but there was nothing, just the swirling fog and the faint outline of the trees beyond. Jake. A voice, soft and distant, echoed through the fog. Jake froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that voice. It was Emma's. "Jake, help me." The voice was coming from the woods, from the direction of the old logging trail where Emma had disappeared. Without thinking, Jake grabbed a flashlight from his truck and followed the voice, his feet moving on their own accord. The fog grew thicker as he entered the woods, the beam of his flashlight barely cutting through the dense mist. The trees loomed above him like dark sentinels, their branches creaking in the cold night air. "Jake, I'm here." The voice was closer now, just ahead. Jake pushed through the underbrush, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. He knew it couldn't be Emma, not really, but the sound of her voice, so familiar, so desperate, drove him forward. Finally, he reached a small clearing deep in the woods. The fog here was so thick, it was like a wall, obscuring everything around him. But then he saw it, a figure standing in the center of the clearing, barely visible through the mist. It was a woman, her long hair flowing in the wind, her back turned to him. "Emma." Jake's voice trembled as he called out to her. The figure didn't move. She just stood there, silent and still. Jake took a step forward, then another, his heart pounding in his ears. He reached out, his hand trembling, and as he touched her shoulder, the figure slowly turned around. It wasn't Emma. The woman who faced him was a stranger, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow and empty, her mouth twisted into a grotesque smile, and she whispered, "You shouldn't have come here, Jake." Before Jake could react, the woman dissolved into the fog, vanishing as if she had never been there at all. The clearing was empty once more, but the air was thick with something else, something dark and malevolent. Jake felt it, a presence watching him, surrounding him, closing in. Panic set in, and Jake turned to run, but the fog seemed to swallow him whole. The path back to town was gone, replaced by an endless maze of trees and mist. No matter which way he turned, he couldn't find his way out. The voice came again, but this time it wasn't just Emma's. It was a chorus of voices overlapping, whispering his name, taunting him. "Jake, Jake, you can't leave." The whispers grew louder, more insistent, filling his mind, drowning out all reason. He stumbled through the woods, disoriented, his flashlight flickering and then dying, leaving him in complete darkness. The ground beneath his feet seemed to shift, and he tripped, falling to his knees in the cold, damp earth. That's when he saw it, an old abandoned cabin half hidden by the fog, its wooden walls rotting and covered in ivy. It looked like it had been there for decades, forgotten by time. Desperate for shelter, Jake crawled to the cabin and pushed the door open. Inside, it was dark and empty, the air thick with the smell of damp wood and decay. Jake collapsed on the floor, his body shaking with fear and exhaustion. The whispers had stopped, but the oppressive presence remained, lurking in the shadows, watching him. He knew he couldn't stay in the cabin, but the thought of going back into the fog, back into the woods, was even more terrifying. As he lay there, his mind racing, he noticed something in the corner of the room, an old dusty mirror leaning against the wall. The glass was cracked and covered in grime, but as Jake stared into it, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Reflected in the mirror was not the cabin, but the living room of his own house in Harper Mills. And there, sitting on the couch, was Emma. She looked exactly as she had the day she disappeared, wearing the same jogging clothes, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was staring straight ahead, her expression blank, her eyes vacant. As Jake watched, she slowly turned her head and looked directly at him through the mirror. "Jake," she whispered, her voice echoing through the cabin, "come home." Jake scrambled to his feet, backing away from the mirror, his heart racing. But no matter where he looked, the reflection didn't change. He could see his house, his living room, and Emma, sitting there, waiting for him. "Jake, I'm waiting." He had to get out, had to get back to Harper Mills to find out if what he was seeing was real or some twisted trick of the fog. But as he turned to leave, he realized something horrifying. The cabin had no door. The way he had come in was gone, replaced by solid, unbroken walls. He was trapped. Jake pounded on the walls, shouting for help, but the only response was the soft, mocking laughter of the voices outside. The walls began to close in, the cabin shrinking around him, the darkness growing thicker, suffocating. The last thing he saw before the world went black was Emma's face in the mirror, her empty eyes staring back at him, her twisted smile frozen in place. Jake Lawson was never seen again. The next morning, the fog lifted, and the town of Harper Mills woke to another quiet day. Jake's disappearance was the talk of the town, but no one could explain it. Search parties were organized, but they found no trace of him. The woods were scoured, every inch of ground covered, but it was as if Jake had simply vanished into thin air. The only clue left behind was his flashlight, found lying on the edge of the old logging trail, its batteries dead. The people of Harper Mills eventually moved on, as small towns tend to do. But those who knew Jake, who had heard the stories of the fog and the voices in the woods, knew better. They knew that something dark lingered in the forests of northern Maine, something that took Emma and then Jake, and that it was only a matter of time before it came for someone else. And so the town remains quiet, the woods untouched, and the fog, well, the fog still rolls in from time to time, thick and unnatural, bringing with it the whispers of the lost. If this story gave you chills, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more eerie tales that will keep you up at night. Share this video with someone who loves a good scare, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Thanks for listening, and remember, in places like Harper Mills, some things are better left alone. Sleep well if you can.